Omagyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajinulambita Bhujo Kanakabhadato Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaurarai Pushpabandho Chitra Samdhotamono Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subala Priyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Nostute Tapta Kanchan Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Guru Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Bhakti Vinod Parivar Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande. I guess it's same thing. Dzień dobry. Same? Dobry wieczór. Okay. Anyway, nice to be with you again this evening. We spoke this morning. We've been speaking the last a few sessions from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I understand the devotees would like an opportunity to just open the forum for questions, so we'll do that tonight. Are there some questions? Yes.
On Saturday, I think Saturday, you mentioned, you quoted this line from Brahma Samhita that
Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo, this line. Just some description of the bliss of Goloka. Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes I've heard devotees play this down as being sort of poetic license as a way of describing things, but that's kind of sat very well with me. It's always a statement that's intrigued me, and you are starting to explain some things about that. I found it very interesting. I'd like to go more in depth about what exactly does that mean, and how should we think about it?
Well, I think that the subject matter, of course, is something that transcends word and thought. Ikshater na shabdat. As the Brahma Sutras state. Now, from the Advaitin perspective, that will be understood in a kind of a static sense. The absolute ultimate reality, Brahman, is beyond word and thought, and therefore silence, right? The sound of silence. But the Gaudiya Vedanta perspective is, I think they see a double negative there, maybe in the sutra, and so they render it that the nature of ultimate reality is such that you cannot say enough about it, which says that it's beyond words, but doesn't render us silent. And I think further that if the former understanding is accepted, it's kind of, well, to use Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj's language, it's suicidal. Because the sutras, which are representing the Upanishads and trying to show the concerted message that the sacred text is promoting, ultimately it's all about Brahman. And if you really can't say anything about it, then what's the use of the Upanishads, right? So he considered it suicidal. So our rendering is more appealing. And again, it is it's the nature of ultimate reality, such that you cannot say enough about it. You give examples of Ananta Sesh, thousands of heads, and constantly trying to adequately or comprehensively or fully describe one quality of Krishna, one Leela of Krishna. And you can't catch up, right? So, that said, I have often mentioned that in my estimation, it seems to be the estimation of our founding charges as well, that perhaps the best language amongst genres of language to employ in an attempt to capture as much as we can about the nature of ultimate reality through word. The best genre to employ might be the poetic genre. Of course, the scriptures speak in different languages, or different voices, I should say, or different. They said that the Veda speaks like a king. The Puranas speak like a friend. And the Kavya, the poetic sections speak like a lover. Now, when you come to the Gaudiya central text, that the other greater body of sacred texts are thought to orbit around and be properly understood in relation to, that being the Bhagavatam, one of its excellences, of course, is that it speaks in all three voices. It speaks like a king and gives orders. It speaks like a friend and says, let's take a walk. Let me tell you a story. And through the story, through the narrative, convey a point, right? And it speaks like a lover also. Lovers have language of their own that only they can understand, even if they speak it in the public. There's a secret meaning that no one knows unless they're part of the affair. So all three voices, it's another argument for the virtues of the Bhagavatam in comparison to other sacred texts. But the poetic genre allows us in this world to express perhaps the reality of the Atma that transcends in and of itself the limits of time and space. And so it appears, when we can't see the Atma, we're only fixated on the external world, that there are limitations for us. But we constantly try to counter that. And the movie ends, and they lived happily ever after. It doesn't happen here, but we want it to happen. It should happen, we think, right? So there's an example, the drama, it's a story, the arts, whether it be drama, poetry, music, this idea. These genres that are often symbolic in nature, from one frame of mind aren't telling us anything, and from another frame of mind they're telling us more. They're starting to take us beyond the limits of the mind and afford us a way of knowing through feeling that transcends the limits of the intellect and so forth. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So all of you artists can appreciate that. It's interesting to note in this regard that the apostles, if you will, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were not shepherds, but they were artists largely, and writers and thinkers and so forth. The recounting the life of Prabhu Gaur, and telling his story in so many beautiful, sophisticated texts, philosophical texts, theological texts, poetic texts, and so on and so forth. Just a point as an aside. So, like I often say, in poetry, the moon can have wings and fly across the sky, right? Now, is that just some make-believe, or is that the self? And it doesn't have the limitations that the world seems to place upon it, trying to come out and express itself. We would say yes. This is our Vedantic metaphysical perspective. Right? The self has come to the fore in human life, which distinguishes it from other less complex forms of life, and brings attention to itself in that form. And therefore, as I often say, in human life, the question why arises. Don't get too frustrated with that question. You might have to take birth as an animal in your next life and go back to just how. How to eat, how to sleep, how to protect myself, how to find a mate. Those questions can be answered in human society most perfectly if the greater balance of our attention and focus is given to the why question, the meaning question, value, which doesn't lie, which is qualitative. It's not found in the quantitative physical world of physical forces, of magnetic, electrical energy, weak and strong nuclear forces, gravity, and so forth. We don't find quality there, we find quantity. If matter mattered, this is of course English, then, as I've said many times, if matter mattered independently of consciousness, who would know about it? Who would care? We're the knower, we're the carer. We give value to the external world, if you will. So that, and this is in a word, why? Why am I? Why? What is the purpose? What is the meaning? Humans are very preoccupied with the idea that there's meaning. Where do I fit in, and so forth. Even those that argue very vociferously that there is no meaning to life have come up with really a no meaning. So they're as driven to find meaning as anyone else. And they conclude there is no meaning, that's their meaning. So why should they get upset with us if we make up a meaning in their view? Right? If we're just making, what's the problem? Right? If it makes us better, it's all the better. Right? Of course, it's a smaller group. As Bhaktivinoda said, if you look from the Aboriginal tribes to the educated Brahmins, to take the whole scope of human society, you're going to find from the beginning, in the middle, and in the end, these kind of questions about why, and the sense that there is meaning, purpose, value that we're supposed to connect with. That to use the phrase of Bhaktivinoda, that the jiva has a purpose, the jaiva, dharma, the purpose. Of course, his purpose is that Krishna's too. No, not what was it? Jiva era swarup hoy, Nitya Krishna Das. The purpose is to serve Bhagavan, to serve Hari, right? So, so because we transcend, ontologically speaking, we transcend time and space. We appear to be confined by it. We're trying to constantly get beyond it. I often say that human life is kind of the celebration of those instances in which we set a new record. It was previously impossible. We went faster. If it's just a 10,000th of a second, we get a gold medal for that. Or if you throw the ball and it goes whoosh, it doesn't even hit the rim, and that, there's a feeling to it. Right? There is perfect knowledge, perfect knowing, by which our actions can be informed such that they'll bring about perfect happiness, which is the pursuit of everyone. I mean, some people say there is no perfect knowledge, but they keep looking for it. So who's crazy? We say there is perfect knowledge, but you have to have a perfect method to find it. And without saying it verbally, we answer. This is the way. That the reality is bigger than us. We're a part of it, but the whole is bigger than us. So let us approach it respectfully, that it might reveal itself to us. Pujyapada Sridhar Maharaj was fond of his equation that if the finite is to know, to understand, it means to grasp, right? The infinite, how is it possible for the finite to know the infinite? Well, it's not on one hand, but on another hand, if the infinite, out of its infinite capacity, chooses to reveal itself to the finite, then it's possible to be conquered even by the finite, to be captured. And of course, that is where we end up in the Chaitanya Sampradaya. Right? Krishna conquered controlled by love. He's the Dhirolita Krishna, this Krishna. So it's a poetic expression. That's true. But to say that it's a poetic expression in the way in which you mentioned, some people have said, is somewhat disconcerting, as you found it. Perhaps we might say that in that way to a certain sector of persons who are having trouble with the description of Krishna in terms of details, because it seems to be talking about something that's finite, something that is, or someone that is provincial, rather than universal and infinite and all accommodating, something sectarian even. The specificity with which Krishna is described may cause certain minds to want to think of that as an inaccurate or just a poetic way of talking about a reality that transcends what appears to be the limitations that go with that. But actually, the specificity is that which affords us the more you know about someone who's nice, and love them. Specificity is an important factor in loving. If you love someone, then you want to know everything about them. And if someone loves you, you tell them everything about you, right? Right? In love, there are no secrets. If you love someone, they'll tell you all their secrets. And of course, the descriptions of Krishna, of course, we can play that out and explain that in such a way to help a person overcome that idea and understand the universality within the specificity, the specifics, the details, and so forth. But it may be useful to talk in that way to some people and say, here's our bottom line, that we say that there is movement in transcendence. Okay? There's movement, because love requires some movement. So there cannot just be one, no movement. Leela means movement. Now we can say Leela means this, and he did this, and he went here, and he did that. People sometimes they think, well, this seems like just using some language to humanize it, and it's a bit limiting. Maybe it works as a tool provisionally, so that we can go beyond its limitations and live in this vague reality that really we just can't put in words. But if we were to say anything about it, okay, there's movement there. There's interaction between ourselves and the Absolute. And you want to talk about it like this, another person may want to talk about it like that, but those are just poetic devices. So what I would say in relation to that kind of objection, or way of thinking about that, to take someone beyond that way of thinking, is to say that the descriptions are limited because it's beyond word and thought. Philosophy is limited. But when someone experiences that reality and then comes within time and space to talk about it, from samadhi, comes out and tries to talk about it, well, he or she can't do justice with it with words, but those words will be very empowered nonetheless, right? They aren't anymore just ordinary poetry. What's driving them is the experience. And we find this in the case of our Goswamis in their Leela Granthas, and here the book, the poetic verse from Brahma Samhita you're referring to. So I would say that these descriptions are limited descriptions. The Leela is, you can't do justice to them, but considerable justice has been done to them nonetheless, and it's in our interest to take them and see where they take us. Krishna's Leela is unlimited, and we kind of get an outline of it, if you will, from the texts. I've said before, if you open the book and there's a table of contents, it's something like that. Keep reading. After a while, you're going to find a page, and it's got your name on it, and it's blank. And through sadhana, you have to fill it out. Through sadhana, insight comes, and you write it out. There's room for more in the book. So, is the walking talking, or is the walking dancing? This is the question you're asking, which the verse says. There, the walking is dancing, the talking is singing. And Jiva Goswami says, what must be the dancing then, and what must be the singing? Obviously, he's telling us, well, I'm trying to talk about this as best I can and share it with you, but I can't do justice to it. The text can't do justice to it. My elaboration, Jiva Goswami's, doesn't do justice to it. But that shouldn't be a cause to take it less seriously. Say, well, it's just poetic. This is empowered poetry. Empowered poetry. Rasa is, the bhakti rasa of Rupa Goswami is not a product of poetry. There is a rasa that is the soul of poetry, that need not necessarily be religious poetry, I guess you could say. But bhakti rasa, that's another thing. And only from bhakti rasa can you get rati, can you get rasa. So you don't have to become a poet. But then again, these acharyas have tried to speak about this in poetic language, and that poetry, that is very powerful. So we should embrace it. And we see, well, this acharya has spoken about the Leela in this way, and this one here with other details. They're trying to bring out the basic sentiments of Vatsalya, Dasya, Sakya, Madhurya, as the Bhagavatam does, to invite us in to such a intimate rapport with the Godhead, the likes of which are not found in any other religious text or sect that I'm aware of. It's just a very beautiful contribution, right? The Bhagavat from our sampradaya in particular, where the the principal commentaries on the Bhagavatam that everybody who recites the Bhagavatam refers to, for the most part, in Vrindavan, which is a good place to hear the Bhagavatam, right? So, yeah, I've likened the text there to Bollywood, right, where all of a sudden it turns into, movies are largely musicals, right? And it used to be like that in the United States too. Musical was a popular genre in Hollywood. Now it's not as popular, but in Bollywood it still is. And suddenly the dance starts, and the word turns into song, and so on and so forth. It's just, so, and what are they trying to do? They're trying to express the feeling of the moment and emphasize it, right? So Bhagavatam is trying to emphasize moments, emotional moments in the life of the Absolute, describing him in it's very charming, but in what would you call it? In crisis, God in crisis, existential crisis. This is Krishna Chaitanya, God in existential crisis. Krishna wondering, what is it about her that makes her so attractive to me when I'm supposed to be God and all attractive, but I'm attracted to her. So maybe I'm not who the yogis think I am, right? Prabhupada used to say that in every religion is teaching that God is the most attractive, worshipful, and we are teaching who is the worshipable object of God. Jai Radhe. This is very, in the religious world, this is very interesting theology. It's very charming and captivating, right? Of course, Krishna realizes he's a very smart, clever fellow. Smart and clever. Intelligent and clever. It means he's Brahminical, a little bit of Brahminical, Abhira, intelligent, and clever, Vaishya, very clever. Different kind of intelligence. And so he comes to the conclusion that what makes her attractive to me, Radha, is something that she sees in me that I cannot see from my vantage point. Right? It's hard to fully see ourselves. We need a partner to bring us back down to earth. Right? Who sees us? We're a little blind to ourselves to some extent. So Krishna realizes Radha, what's making her the way she is something in me, but I can't see that. So if I can step into her shoes and look at myself from her vantage point, then I will come to the conclusion. And that conclusion is there's no conclusion to the glory of Krishna, right? Because her prem is characterized very curiously to be full and ever increasing at the same time. So you can ask the question, how can it be full and ever increasing? What will be the answer? You think too much. We're trying to get you beyond the limits of thought and reason, right? And that's reasonable. Adopt a trans-rational method for knowing, like the chanting. It's not unreasonable to chant, but it's not a rational exercise. It's not irrational. It picks up where reason leaves off. And so with all these sessions, these gatherings, these talks, and so forth, right? So, but yes, as Nietzsche said, if there's a God, he'll be a dancer. Right? He was right. Natavar, well, not, she was also a dancer too, but Vrindavan, Natavar, the best dancer in Vrindavan. Of course, Krishna's, they may call him the best dancer, but he knows otherwise. Ami Shishya Guru Nata. Speaking about Radharani, Krishna says, I'm the disciple and the dancing of Radha, that is my guru. We were talking the other day about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's approaching Jagannath Puri. I mean, he had started from Bengal. It's a long journey, and when he gets close enough to see the steeple on the temple of Jagannath, his separation now becomes that much more intense. He can see the goal, but it's closer to it physically, but he's feeling the separation more. So the distance becomes greater. He's actually closer physically, but in reality, he's further away. So reality just doesn't come down to the physical measurements, right? In reality, he's further away. And so the last mile is like a yuga to arrive there. Meanwhile, from the other side, Jagannath sitting there with his eyes never blinking. All type of religious people are speculating. What's he looking for? What's he thinking? Who is he? The Buddhists worship him. Different types of bhaktas worship him. He's Jagannath. His form is like ununderstandable. Maybe it's because, well, you can't. What can you do? You can't put his form into words, or just there he is, something like that. Right? Of course, the Gaudiyas have a very charming understanding of who Jagannath is and who he's looking for. He doesn't have any eyelashes, right? So he's looking everywhere for Radha. This is Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri is a moment in the Dwaraka Leela. A moment, take a moment out, a moment when Krishna, the prince in Dwarka, has caused to reflect deeply on the love of the inhabitants of Vrindavan and the gopis in particular, and he's undergone asta satvika vikar to the extreme, right? To the extreme involuntary bodily transformations. He's experiencing the ones that Rupa Goswami says, I'm only giving 8 of them here. The other ones are too rare to talk about. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu experienced those, exhibited those. And Jagannath, right? So on the one side, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we talk about his feeling. Now the other side is, how is Jagannath feeling? Because now who he's looking for is coming. What is that? the dancing of Radha that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu represents, right? When he danced in the Rath Yatra, Jagannath was stunned. He couldn't move. The cart could not move. They had an elephant try to push the cart. So many wrestlers tried to push the cart. Until Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced around the cart and pushed it with his head. Then it rolled on. So what is the feeling of Jagannath? That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was coming. This is a very beautiful idea. Right? When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Jagannath, he saw him with a peacock feather and holding a flute. Krishna in Vrindavan, Pujapat Sridhar Maharaj called it in Dwarka a train wreck, a crash between the Vrindavan perspective and the Dwarka perspective, and Jagannath is the victim, hospitalized. Right there he is, frozen on the altar. Right, take him out for a walk once a year and bring him back and keep him in there. Don't let everybody in. Private. He's in critical condition. Critical condition in the hospital. Right? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is the solution to his dilemma. And so the dancer, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what was his dancing, right? This is the dancing of Radha. This is the guru, the dancing of Radha, the guru of Krishna. His guru was Sandipani Muni. We were talking about that the other day, but this is his Ragmarg guru, the dancing of Radharani. And the understanding then what's driving that, what in himself is driving. So these are very beautiful ideas that should be taken on a literal level in one sense, to distinguish the idea from what's being said from the idea that these are just stories that have a moral or provisional manifestation of divinity to focus yourself on, that's moving, so that you can arrive at a non-moving position. I mean, it's very. I once went to a lecture from some guru, this was many years ago, in San Francisco. Myself and a godbrother or two of mine, we went to hear this fellow, see what he was saying. And, it was your typical Neo-Advaitin sayings that are supposed to really be profound and so forth. No real philosophy. So anyway, my godbrother, he stood up and said, because he was speaking about love at a certain point. Maybe I can't remember everything, but maybe about between devotees or in their mission or something. So he stood up and he said, you really have talked very beautifully about love, and everybody goes, Jai Gurudev. And he said, but at the same time you're positing an ideal in which that all ends. In Gyan, you can't have any friends. In yoga, you can't have any friends. It's a lonely path, right? Even the highest ideal of yoga, well, of course it's bhakti yoga, but I mean the yoga sutra idea, the yoga, I'm going to say yoga mixed with bhakti, or bhakti mixed with yoga, let's say. It culminates in Shantaras. It's a lonely affair. The beatific vision of Krishna, without any participation in his leela. Would speak of that's bhakti mixed with yoga. If you take yoga mixed with bhakti, it's even more static, if you will. But in bhakti, then, would you say it in another way? In gyan or in yoga, one of the limbs of the practice, of the body of the practice, is gyan vairagya. So one progresses by detachment. And how do we progress in bhakti? By attachment. by Sangha, by Sadhu Sangha. It's a very curious form of Vedanta, right? Of course, we say Vairagya. It's a very Vai kind of rag, a very special kind of rag, special kind of attachment is our sense of Vairagya. If you attach to the one who owns everything, then your tendency to try to own it for yourself will be diminished considerably, right? So, does that help? Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's very helpful to try to think of it more literally than not. There's certainly dancing there. Certainly the walking is dancing. Certainly the talking is singing. But then, what are the songs? Right? Cowherd boys are particularly very known for their own spontaneous compositions, especially the Narmasakas. So, to hear those songs, and to come under the tutelage of Vishaka Devi, to learn how to sing, for example. This is a nice idea for a Narmasaka sadhaka. What will be the songs then? What will be the content of them? We just extend it, right? What else? Yes.
Maharaj, in 1 week begins the intercalary month of Purushottama. And some Gaudiya Vaishnavas still speak a lot about this month. What are your thoughts?
It's not a subject that I have ever paid much attention to. And it's probably because my Guru Maharaj didn't pay that much attention to it. Not to say that it wasn't important. He had important things on his mind that he was preoccupied with. And that and similar other observances were not primary in his focus. And I did not find that, I found that something similar, a little different, but similar in the case of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj. Purushottam Mass is kind of like a leap year month or something like that. There's an extra month in the Vaishnava calendar, and there are certainly scriptural references for the auspicious nature of it. Purushottam means Krishna, whether he's Lila Purushottam or he's Prem Purushottam, Krishna or Gaur Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so, as far as I understand it, and they're based on statements of different Puranas. It's not in the Bhagavad Purana, but maybe in the Vishnu Purana, which is a Sattvic Purana. And it may be something it's possibly very more prominent in the Vaidimarg Sampradaya, which the Vishnu Purana caters to compared to the Bhagavad, which caters to a Ragmarg perspective, right? So in those kind of texts you find, if you do this on Purushottam, and this will happen, that will happen, and so forth. And so many Gaudiya Vaishnavas will embrace that kind of practice as well. I suppose you could say, you have the Kartik Mas, the month of Radha. Although Krishna identifies himself with the following month, what is it? After Kartik comes, again, my memory's failing me. Of months I am Margashirsha. Margashirsha, Krishna says, the month after Kartik. But still, this Purushottam month seems to be like a month representing Krishna in another sense. There aren't a lot of rituals and statements about observing the Margashirsha Mas, whereas there are about in Vishnu Purana, for example, Padma Purana, with regard to observing the Kartik. Whatever's found in Gaudiya Vaishnava is drawn from there. There's just a few statements, but we give it a lot of emphasis. So this is maybe I'd say something like the parallel, the month of Purushottam. So by remembering, these are, well, there's a couple of ways to look at this. One way is there's an actual titi, time, and 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 that particular arrangement of the stars, which constitute, there's a quality to the time, and it's auspicious, like the Brahma Muhurta, 2 muhurtas before sunrise. These ideas, they should not be dismissed as being superstitious, but they're difficult to fully take advantage of and invest oneself in, because we are so distanced from those ideas by philosophical materialism that we're bombarded by. It takes the life out of everything. You know, we talk about, okay, there's a world where the singing is where the talking is singing, where the walking is dancing. It sounds like a stretch, but one of the reasons it sounds like a stretch and must be just poetic or something like that is because we whether we know it or not, we've imbibed to one extent or another over centuries and centuries of materialistic philosophy an idea that if anyone's alive, it's us, and everything else is kind of dead, yeah? And we can do what we want with it. Nature. We don't see the life of the trees. That now some people are writing about how they communicate. That bees have self-awareness, these kind of findings. They're still thought, wait, I don't know, we can accept, that's not peer-reviewed enough. You know, or that plants, now, the plants have feelings. And then that panpsychic, the consciousness in everything. We're distanced from these ideas, which, if they were embraced, make the whole world become more alive. Like we hear about Vrindavan, right? The trees are just not ordinary, they're alokik. They can talk to you. The grass can talk to you. Was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a poet? Or was he a bhakta? He said, Na dhanam na janam na sundaram kavitam ba jagadisha kamaye. I'm not interested in wealth and women, the opposite sex or the same sex, companionship. I'm not interested in followers, and neither the arts, poetry, kobitam va, that either, not that either, which is thought to kind of be the upper sattvic end of high society, refined feelings, sensibilities, able to draw something out that other people who don't have the samskars for that cannot do. Music that makes you, move. Ugh, it is horrible. The classical music, that they can hear something there that the ordinary ear cannot hear. Right? He says no, and that is often equated with spirituality. And then the rasa then of ordinary poetry, if you will. But Mahaprabhu says kavitam va. I'm not a poet either. I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in bhakti, right? Kavitam va. What was my point here? Kavitam va. Go ahead.
Before that, you were just mentioning about the trees and everything.
Right.
More alive.
Thank you. Yes. So again, poetry brings things alive, right? But he says, I'm not a anyway. The more we come into this type of worldview, the more it's not as much of a stretch. It seems like a stretch because we think everything's dead, but it's actually alive, right? Living, talking, breathing. Everything has an atma, and now that you can, now people have, in the scientific community, finding this kind of thing out. For the time of Descartes here in Europe, it was like everything, only humans, animals have no souls, rape and pillage the natural world. It's for us. God gave it to us. So this is, we're suffering from centuries of this kind of thinking. It's a much less imaginative world. I use imagination in a positive sense here. Imagination is not a negative thing, right? Imagine. There's no religion. No, I didn't mean that. There was some good points in that song, but yeah, no religion might be good, right? It does get in the way. Ultimately, it has a great potential to get in the way. And the yogi is the real, the devotee has no religion in a sense, right? He's transcended the limits of religion. Anyway, too many thoughts. What was the last question we were Purushottamas, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So Purushottamas, then there's a titi, so there's a specific time, and there were people who were tuned into nature in ways that we're just not. We think we're really tuned into nature because we really looked all the way down to the subatomic world and then closed the door. I said, that doesn't make any sense. Meanwhile, 2/3 of the world's economy is based on, the quantum reality. But still, the vast majority of science is, it looks like it works like that down there, but it can't. That doesn't make any sense. So we think we've looked very deeply into nature, but to revert back to something I said earlier, if you love someone, they'll tell you all their secrets. And the way in which we approach nature is not with a lot of love, right? Since the seventh scientific revolution, it's not with a lot of love. And the environmental crisis is evidence that we approached her in a different way. And she's responding different, not with the abundance that you hear in Prabhupada's early purports in the first canto of the Bhagavatam. And the fields were muddy with milk, cows flowing with affection, abundance of growth and agriculture. He has some very beautiful purports there. It's very Gandhian. It's a pity that India didn't go in that direction when it achieved its nationhood. Instead, they followed the British. So we're a little distanced from all of this. But these are magical truths, mystical truths. There are times, the quality of the time is different if you know it and you can take advantage of. So we should embrace it. Prabhupada is a bit of a ritualist, so he can appreciate it. But just to put on the tilak in 12 places. I mean, I can't explain it all, but I believe in it, right? Right. But there are people that have written about it, of course, where the ideas come from. They can explain the details of the ritual and how Vishnu is present here in this form, and this form, and this form, and this form here, and so on and so forth. And these things, if you embrace them, they will transport you into a mystical realm where the possibilities that exist are very extraordinary in comparison, and magical, superstitious, but from the ordinary point of view, but real. You become a mystic in that way. Yeah. But we're not acquainted with all those details, so sometimes it's hard to. If you were, it would be more compelling, right? To follow the recommendations for observance of the Purushottam Mas, and then you go to the next one. A couple months later, it's the Kartik Mas, and every month it's the Ekadasi. Tomorrow, Ekadasi Vrat Ki Jai, right? So these are magical events, actually. And there was a time that people understood them, drew and observed them, and drew from them all that the scriptures say they have to offer and so forth. and they lived in a much more loving way in relation to the world that they're in now. And of course, ultimately, as I said, if you approach nature with love, this is the whole idea of varnashram. It's limited in one sense. We can talk about that side, but it's very beautiful in another sense, right? Because it's teaching us how to be grateful for the wind, grateful for the water, grateful for the sun, and do Surya Namaskar in the morning. And so to have a worshipful attitude towards nature that we're so dependent upon, towards the macrocosm that our body mind is a microcosm of, and can't function without that macrocosm. We can't see without light. We're dependent, so we live graciously, respect everywhere, and the river. And we see the river as a goddess, and she is a goddess. Agus vida, right? Water is life. Sun, these things are so to be live. Just imagine to live and kind of and actually wake up and naturally have the kind of respect for the sun, for the water that we should have, right? To live. Vishnu gave us this world as a chance, as his parts and parcels, to meet our Maker. That's what it. In one sense, he manifests the world for that. And we've got bodies, human bodies, and this is what they're for. Imagine living like that. How do we really feel what the sun means to you? I mean, can we stop talking about that? I mean, where would we reach the limit of such a thing? But we just, this is going on with the day, right? Trying to make something out of the night, turn on the light. So this is very beautiful. And of course, the point I'm making here is that ultimately, if you love someone, they tell you their secrets. And what is the real secret of secrets that nature holds? The secret is that she has a soul, and it's us. We are the soul of nature. That's a different school, right? We want to graduate from this kind of class, this kind of teaching. So Purushottamas, it's did it just begin or in 1 week. So you can look it up on Google there and get some ideas. But it's so. But we're limited in this way, I think, from being able to appreciate it fully. But it is. These are important, valuable observances, valuable opportunities. Of course, now when is the tithi? It's calculated in a certain place and a certain time. We live, 10,000 miles from there, and it's all very complicated. That's one of the reasons also probably making his worldwide campaign. He thought, well, when is Ekadasi? It's Ekadasi in India today. It's Ekadasi in Poland today too. Right? It really, it wasn't, but it was. Something like that. He'd emphasize the more and the beauty of Nam Sankirtan as a comprehensive ritual that anyone in any time, any place, anywhere can observe and derive more results from than they can from any other observance. It was a very. I mean, what else could he do? It was well reasoned, right? Nam Sankirtan ki jai. What else? Yes.
Today we're speaking or discussing, you mentioned that Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, the Supreme Person himself. So, how come Gaudiya Vaishnavism isn't more popular? How come more people aren't picking up on it? It's not as though, let's say, Christianity or other religions and Prabhupada did. lacking a good answer to this.
Well, one of the things you can ask yourself is why is not Eastern philosophy as popular as Western philosophy at large? So you go to your typical university here in Europe or the Americas and so forth. You want to take a course on philosophy. It's a different course. Eastern philosophy in the classroom will be much smaller. So there's this. We live under the oppressive notion of how would you call it? European. Eurocentric, but it's European. There's a phrase in. Well, no, that's there's a phrase. It's exceptionalism, European exceptionalism. America does it too. American exceptionalism, and it's and the basis of this largely is the scientific revolution in Europe, which shut down a lot of shamans, pagans, and such people, put them out of business, so to speak, right? With penicillin instead of a shaman ritual or whatever to cure the plague and so forth. So the results, the practical results coming from that, in terms of, in a relative sense, improving living conditions, let's say, garnered a lot of faith from people, and then it was and promoted economic development and so forth. And so, if you've got economic development and you've got sense gratification, well, the average Jew is going to think I'm doing pretty good here. And meanwhile, over in Asia, you know, they have a whole different idea of what it, you know, less is more, to give like a Buddhist saying, which Buddhism is just really an offshoot of Hinduism. This is totally backwards from the Western way of thinking. And Christianity gave birth, to, I say Christianity was born, or science, let's say, was born as a Christian. And then after time, in its boyhood, it became agnostic. Not sure about that. And then in its adulthood, now it's become atheistic. But if it's to live a long and meaningful life, it has to become a mystic in the end. And if you look and see at materialism from a philosophical point of view, informed by scientific data, interpretations of it, and so forth, when you get really deep into that, there you find you're just finding parallels with Eastern thinking. There's nowhere that the scientific community, in its interest in the nature of consciousness, nowhere that it's turned outside of itself for answers more than to Asia, to India, to Buddhism, to Hindu, to Vedanta, and so forth. So these are, and it's not self-promoting either. It's not self-promoting. Western civilization is very self-promoting. You got to get out there and make your case for who you are, right? And at the cost of others and so forth. So these are two different worlds. The Western world is more user-friendly for the jiva in terms of his illusion and the values that arise out of his identification with the body and body-mind complex, right? So it's become more popular, and the whole of Eastern philosophy, it's not given the same degree of attention, and and so within that, of course, then you have the broader strokes of Eastern philosophy, and then you have, when you come to Vaishnavism, and within that, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it's becoming more and more theological, right? More and more theologically refined and so forth. And it's asking more and more of us also. Gyan Shunya Bhakti. I mean, it's very charming, right? Walking is dancing and the talking is singing, but the people who arrive there are all completely selfless, right? So there's no even spiritual selfishness in there. The absence of spiritual selfishness. There's material selfishness, there's spiritual selfishness. Therefore, the examples are given like, oh, Narad was told by Krishna that, Narad, I've got a headache. Narad said, what would be the cure? He said, get the dust of the feet from my devotees. Narad thought, I'm not a fool. He's tricking me. But I'll go out and I'll ask different people. Came back and no one would give the dust of their feet. All your devotees passed the test, Krishna. What do you mean? None of them would give the dust of their feet, obviously, to put on your head. He said, I'm not testing you, I got a headache. And I need the dust of the feet from my devotees. No, I asked all the devotees, no devotee will put their feet on your head. He said, what about those girls over there in that village, amongst those cow people there? Well, I didn't ask them. They are devotees too. They don't know Vedanta or anything. Yeah, I'm going to go ask them. So he went and asked the gopis, yes, Narad, what can we do for you? How can we serve you? He said, Krishna has a headache. How can we cure it? How can we help? Oh, he said he gave the dust of your feet. They said, well, okay, here, you take it. He said, don't you know what will happen if you get the dust of your feet on Krishna's head? They said, yes, we'll go to hell. But it will solve Krishna's headache. We have no concern for ourselves. So Narad got a lesson, right, in Braj Bhakti. So the measure of the selflessness is there's no comparison to what's asked there. The giving, and therefore the getting is so great. Krishna is conquered by that. Krishna, that big God, becomes small, medium size. Means he's not finite, he's not infinite, he's medium size, like us, and lovable. So if you look at the core, I mean, it's a charming idea, it's beautiful, but then, the teaching, how to get there, well, that's we're asking a lot of people, right? I mean, does yoga make sense? But how many people do it? You can think, well, it's very popular, Gurmar. Well, yeah, but I mean, compared to what? McDonald's is way more popular than yoga, right? The famous American restaurant, American dining, available around the world. How pathetic. So, let me give you another example. Here's an example that Prabhupada used to give. If you go to a jewelry store, then there's lots of, you can go to the cheap store and get imitation jewels, and they'll sell a lot more, but a valuable diamond will be kept in a safe and brought out to the right client, shown, right? Not many people will be interested to pay the price for that. And this is what I'm saying. They won't be willing to pay the price. But that said, of course, yes, it's a very charming idea. It's very user friendly, and you have to give it a little chance. If you think, well, look at Christianity. There's a very distorted idea of what Jesus of Nazareth was teaching. I would say that's prominent in the world. It goes in the name of Christianity, and there are better sectors of it as well, and so forth. But it's had a couple thousand years, right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came 500 years ago, so give us 1,500 years more. Okay? maybe we'll make some headway. We're making headway. All right, so we've talked. It's been a nice back and forth, and we'll stop there. And when do we meet again? Tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon? Afternoon? And tomorrow's Ekadasi, special. What is it called? Hari... Hari's Day. Tomorrow. Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Pancha Tattva ki jai, Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premananda.